So it's been a few days now since my TEDx talk, and I'm still coming back down from cloud nine. It was such a surreal experience from start to finish, I would say. And I just had so many emotions bubbling away inside me that I felt like sharing. And then I received some DMs on Instagram from people saying that TEDx is on their bucket list or on their vision board. And they were asking me questions about how to go about, getting a TEDx opportunity, etc. So I thought, well, why not combine the two, share my experience and also answer those questions for people who really want to make it, make their dream come true the way that I did. So if we don't know each other already, I'm Nikita and I combine spirituality with practicality. I believe that you don't need to go to a retreat or stay in an ashram to be spiritual. You can integrate it into your daily life, and that's exactly what I do and what I teach. I have been doing this work for the past 20 years. I ran a dance school and I have been part of so many people's journeys during that time. In 2025, I stepped back from my dance school because I decided to fully focus on spreading my message. And that's exactly why the TEDx opportunity just came at the right time and it was ideal for me. So, we're going to break this podcast into three sections. So, feel free to forward to the bit that you think will be most relevant to you. The first section is manifestation. So, how did I get the opportunity in the first place? What work did I have to do internally to be able to reflect that externally? As we already know, our external world is simply a mirror of our internal world. So it all starts with you. It's not about just sitting around waiting or hoping that the opportunity will land. It's about actually doing the inner work. So that's the first part, the manifestation. The second part is the applying. So, how the logistics, how I found out about it, like what the process is, the auditioning, all of that. And then the third part is the preparation. So, I'll try and keep it short. But of course, as I said, there's just so much stirring away inside. So, I'm just want to share as much as I can in the time frame. So, the first part is manifestation. So, this is really, really important. I have been manifesting my whole life, unknowingly initially, but then later on learning that there was actually a formula for what I was doing. Everything I have achieved, I've had my own studio, I live in my dream house, I'm married to my soulmate, like everything that I have, which is tangible and also non-tangible, I believe that I manifested into reality, which we all do. We're all co-creating all of the time. The only thing is that not everybody has the tools or the awareness to be able to consciously manifest. So people are actually bringing to reality the opposite of what they want simply because they don't have the toolkit to be able to, really work intentionally. So, obviously, some of you might know my story. I spent 10 years in India. That's a significant amount of time for somebody who's British born, living there 6 months at a time, then coming back, saving up, then going back again. And during that time, I was training to be an Indian classical dancer, which is one of the most disciplined art forms. It's so intricate and there's so much rhythm and discipline. My teacher was very strict. Every little thing was critiqued and questioned. And, I enjoyed the experience, but it really shaped me into who I am today because I set myself such high standards as a result of that training. And while I was there, I was also learning yoga, I was doing meditation, I was studying philosophy. And that's where I first heard the word Dharma, which I'm so passionate about now. And then I came back and I started my dance school. I ran it for 20 years. And it was only in the last 5 years since the pandemic that I started feeling something was misaligned. And I was feeling like the studio walls were confining me. And I actually wanted a bigger platform to spread my wings and to make more impact. And I truly believe that the message that I have is the antidote to what's going on in the world today. I truly believe that, the journey that I take people on is the solution for the problems in the world, which is taking people from karma to dharma. So we'll go into that a bit later. So with regards to the manifestation, I consciously knew that I needed a bigger platform in order to make this dream a reality. Now, it wasn't that I wanted a platform so that I could feel good and I could dress up and I could have a moment of fame. That's not a pure intention. So the first tip I'd like you to make a note of is that if TEDx is on your bucket list or your vision board, ask why. Is it because you want a few Instagram photos? Is it because you want to feel good? Is it because you want to impress your family and friends? Is it because you want to prove something to your younger self or to your parents who didn't believe in you or to your siblings who you were compared against? Really go inwards and ask yourself why, because that why is going to be fuel for whether or not you get your manifestation quickly or not. So think about the timeline. I closed my dance school. Well, I stepped back in July 2025. I still stayed involved. I was a silent partner for 6 months. So July 2025, I stepped back. So that was the first time I made the decision. Then in around Christmas time, 2025, I decided to step back fully. So even being a silent partner, I felt was energetically pulling me there. And that's when I started manifesting. By June 2026, 6 months later, I got it. So that's very fast. That's an accelerated manifestation. How did I get it that quickly? By having a very, very pure intention. So my intention was, I have an idea worth spreading. I genuinely believe that I know, as I said, the antidote for today's corruption, war, poverty, like all of the problems that are in the world right now. I truly believe that I know the solution for them. Now, I might sound delusional to you, but that's what you've got to convince your mind of, because that's the only way manifestations happen, if it's operating from service. So my intention was pure service. Now, whether or not that's true, whether or not my formula is going to save the world, is secondary. The primary thing is, I truly believe it is. So you've got to have so much self-belief, belief in yourself, but also belief in your idea. So when I manifested, of course, I put the logo on my vision board. So that's a practical thing you can do. But then I started working on my idea. So this is even before I started applying, by the way. I started working on what is it that I genuinely want to share. And for me, it was very easy to do that because it's related to my brand, which is Journey from Karma to Dharma. So it's guiding people from karmic patterns, unconscious inherited identities, to embodied truth and purpose. So that's something I've been guiding people on for years, and I have seen the most phenomenal results in my clients, but also in myself. And so that's why I was so passionate and so geared up to want to spread this message on a big platform. And I didn't feel like a podcast or anything like that would do it. I have been doing those, but I really wanted something that would go to the masses very quickly, because I know there's so many people in the world struggling right now, and I feel like they needed to hear this to give them some hope or some inspiration. So again, it might sound delusional to you. You might think, gosh, she thinks a lot of herself, but you've got to. That's the amount of belief you've got to have to make your manifestation happen. So that's the first step. The second step is applying. Now, this is the logistics. So once you feel like you've got an idea worth spreading, something very unique, something that, even if the idea is not unique, the way you present it has to be something that has your own perception, your perspective. It can involve your story. It doesn't have to, but it can. My TEDx talk actually was heavily focused on my story because I wanted to be an example rather than someone who is preaching. I think if I were to do another one in future, I probably would only focus on the idea. But because it was my first one, I almost wanted it to be a debut. And I wanted to show people that I'm an example of someone who dances with their Dharma, which is literally flowing with their purpose. That's what Dance with Your Dharma was, the title of my talk. And it was a metaphor for flowing with your purpose. And so in order to make my idea unique, I presented it in the form of a bridge. So the analogy of a bridge fitted in with the theme. So you always have to fit in with the theme that, of the talk. So I was doing mine in Cornwall and it was power of creativity. So I decided to present my idea as creativity is the bridge from chaos to clarity. So even the title itself, there was so much thought that went into it. So creativity as a bridge. So most people think of creativity as an art form. In my case, I was going to do an art form, which was dance, but I was also using it as a metaphor again for life. And the summary of my talk was creativity is not an art form, it's the choices that you make. It's the courage that you use to make those choices. And it's listening to your intuition over your fear. And in order to do that, you need to cross a bridge from chaos to clarity. So chaos implies that we're living in a world of noise, there's lots of disruption, there's lots of fear. And so if you want to be in a state of clarity, which means that you're thinking clearly, you're operating from your higher self, you are making decisions that are very aligned with you in your life and your purpose, then you need to cross this bridge. And so I presented it as creativity is the bridge, but not creativity as in singing, dancing, or painting, creativity as in courage, making choices. So that was how I weaved it in with the theme. Now, in my brand, I also use the analogy of a bridge, and I say that the bridge is the journey from karma to dharma. So karma is when you're standing on one side, which is where I was this time last year. I was wanting to close down my dance school, but there was 20 years of obligation, of expectation, of duty, and I felt pulled and I was so attached to my identity. And then Dharma is the other side of the bridge, which is where you know that you have something to offer the world. You know that there's something inside you waiting to be expressed, but you don't know what it is or how to get there. There's a whole bridge to cross over. So in my brand, I already used the bridge. So all I did was just adapted it slightly to fit in with the theme of TEDx Churro, which was creativity. And then the subtitle of my talk was Dance with Your Dharma, which is word wizardry, but also, again, as I said earlier, it's a metaphor for, being in flow with your purpose. So those two titles that I had, the top title and the subtitle, was a lot. And then I had to write a proposal explaining what my thought process was behind all of that. And then you had to submit a video explaining it. So similar to what I'm doing now, I explained it to the organizers. And then out of 300 people, they selected 100 to be shortlisted for an audition. Thankfully, the audition was online. I have done some auditions in person. In fact, in January this year, I went to Tamworth and I did an audition there and I didn't get it. So prior to this, it's worth noting that I did apply to other TEDx events and I got rejected. I don't like that word, but I did. But now I look back, I realise it was the right thing because I wasn't ready and I needed this much time to prepare. So then I got invited to an audition, and it was in the audition that I had to talk about my idea. I had to give a little bit of an example of what my talk would be like. I presented this concept of wanting to dance, and normally you don't dance in a TEDx talk, like you talk. So that was quite unusual, and I was there was fear around that. There was limiting beliefs like going on in my mind, like, oh, they're not going to accept you because they're going to think that it's too much, it's too theatrical, it's not unique enough. There were so many limiting beliefs, but I worked through those. And so when we did the audition, obviously to audition 100 people is a long time. So I had to wait months to get the results. And those months I decided rather than just sitting around waiting, I was going to keep working on myself and I was going to keep working on my idea. So during that time, I did a lot of shadow integration. Shadow integration is something that I actually talk about in the talk itself, and it's a term by psychologist Carl Jung, and he named the shadow as the parts of ourselves that we suppress in order to survive. So basically, it's the darkest parts of our personality. It's the parts that we are usually afraid to face. So I decided that I was going to spend 6 months from January, which is when I applied, to June, which is when I did it, working on myself. So I really went inwards, and thankfully it was winter in the UK at the same time, up until about April. So I wasn't missing much. I was staying home. I kept my head down. I said no to a lot of social commitments. I didn't go out much. I just went for walks, really just focused on me. Did a lot of meditation, did a lot of reading, listened to a lot of podcasts, watched a lot of webinars on YouTube and things like that. I'm also part of a container by Lenka Lutonska, her Business Energetics Academy. So just dived into her material, her energy field, which is amazingly radiant. And just use those 6 months to really go inwards. And I mean, like, honestly, I faced such dark parts of myself. I cried, I journaled, I had sleepless nights. I used to wake up and my chest was racing, and it was my nervous system trying to expand, and at the same time, there was feelings of guilt and shame coming back from leaving my dance school. There was a sense that maybe I didn't get closure from it. Like, there was so much. It was a whirlwind. And when I found out that I had got the opportunity, I found out in April, and I continued then doing the shadow work for the rest of that time. I just couldn't believe it when I read that email. Like, it was, honestly, I froze. My husband was at work that day. He sometimes works from home and sometimes he goes in, and that was one of the days that he'd gone in. And I just didn't even feel like phoning him or telling anybody. I just wanted to be in that moment myself. And it was almost like God had answered my prayers. That's how I felt when I read that. I thought, this is it. This is what you've been working on. And I genuinely believe I wouldn't have got it if I didn't do that much shadow work. So it's really important to emphasize that the preparation work is so important. And that's what leads me into the third section. So the first section was manifestation. The second section was actually applying and doing the shadow work. Then the third section is preparing. So I found out early April that I'd got it, and it was going to be held in mid-June. So I knew that I had about, 2.5 months to prepare. Now, the first thing to do is write the script. What was funny about it was, not funny, but interesting, I'd say, is that one day I went to sleep and I was used to waking up, as I say, most nights I've been waking up at 4 a.m. and my chest has been racing. But one night was interesting because I woke up and I had this massive download, like the ideas were just pouring and it was just coming to me, and I had to grab my journal, turn on the light in the middle of the night and just write. And I was just writing and it was just coming through me. And that ended up being my script. And they assign you a mentor. So I was so lucky with my mentor. I had a lady called Anna, and she was the most beautiful soul. And she is spiritual herself. She's a Kundalini teacher. And having her as my mentor was just so grounding. It felt like, again, the universe had sent somebody to really support me. And one of my biggest concerns was that my TEDx presentation was heavily focused on my story. And when I'd watched other people's online, it was mainly focused on the idea. And so I ran that by her and I said, is it too much? Should I cut it down? And she said, usually it is too much. Yes, normally people just tell a little bit of their story and the rest is the idea. But in your case, your story is the idea. So do it. You embody it. You are the idea. So go for it. And so she gave me so much autonomy. And so I went with it. And she knew that that was a download. It hadn't come from my logical mind. It had very much come from my higher self, channeled through, the universe. And so she allowed me to just roll with it, and it was an amazing experience. She helped me with the delivery, she helped me improve my tone. One of the things that I had to play around with a lot was my style, because when I started delivering it, I was doing it in a very theatrical way, because remember, I've been a dancer for most of my life. I've had 20 years experience performing and teaching dance, so I automatically went into this stylized mode. One of the things she helped me to do was to break down barriers and to really let people see my real self. And what was interesting is I shared it with, I practiced on quite a few friends, and some of my friends have known me all my life. We've been childhood friends, and they said to me, Nikita, I've known you for about 40 years, but I've never heard your true voice before. This is the first time I've heard your real voice come out. And I was like, wow, what a statement to make. It just goes to show that what I was doing before was speaking behind filters, behind masks. I was performing, which I think many of us do. And actually, that was another aspect of my talk and my message. And whereas now I was allowing my true self to come out. So that was a very important part of it. Another thing that I found challenging was standing up and talking without using my hands, because when I normally talk, I use my hands a lot. But one of the pieces of feedback Anna gave me was you use your hands way too much. And it's fine if you are, again, in a stylized performance mode, but you genuinely want this idea to land. So in order to do that, you need to control your hands and just trust that your voice and your face is enough. And so that was a real challenge for me, not using my hands as much. And the second challenge was it's a very small red dot. The dot is so small. It's so much smaller than it looks on YouTube videos. And to stand on that one spot and not move was so difficult for me. I wanted to pick up my feet. I wanted to fly to this part of the stage. And again, comes back from my performance experience. And so that was another challenge for me, to be able to just stay put. And it all came back to the same thing. Trust yourself and trust your message. That was the biggest takeaway for me. So those were the three parts of my journey. It was manifesting, then it was applying, and then it was preparing. I'd love to hear from you. What were your biggest takeaways from my journey? And if you have any specific questions, reach out. I'm happy to help. You know, if it truly is your dream, if you really want it, if your higher self is telling you that that's part of your dharma, your purpose, to be a TEDx speaker, then let me know. I can see if I can help you out anymore. But hopefully this has been helpful enough for now, and good luck if you are applying. Yeah, I'd love to know in future if this has contributed to you applying and spreading your message, because that's what it's all about. We're all here to use our lived experiences to support one another. If you'd like to know more about me, follow me on social media, Journey with Nikita. I've also got my website, journeywithnikita.com. There's a fun quiz on the website to find out your Dharma archetype. If you'd like to do that quiz, people have had real insights about their personality and their soul's core nature. So feel free to do that. I offer a 9-month Dharma diploma program, and that's an energetic, sacred container where I hold space for people for 9 months to go on a complete journey of learning their soul lessons, understanding why they're here on earth, learning the formula for manifestation, going into the archetypes in more detail. Like, there's so much depth in that course that I offer. And it's all online. The next intake is September, and then January, and then April. So if you're interested, let me know and I'll send more details. Good luck and namaste.